With the new update, there's a new level cap. And the question is, what happens to my build? What is it that I have to do with my previous character that I already had on high level for this to be an optimal build, and how to make the strongest possible build and deal the most amazing damage while being as efficient as possible? Because yeah, basically what happened in here is that, as you can see, there is no longer a cap in here. And the pipeline is still going to be the very same pipeline that we used to have on the new games. The very same focus that you are going to have is that you're going to want to focus on your main stat, like always, ASAP. You want to level up, you want to keep upgrading your character, but you want to level up the maximum of your stat. So basically in here, what I was doing is that as soon as I managed on my previous playthrough, on my previous character, my previous build, my goal, my focus, and this was also true back in the days of Neo as well, I wanted to reach my main stat to the maximum. It is amazing in here and then the Neo games as well, because this is going to give you HP. Raising your main stat is going to give you HP, so you're always going to get the survivability in here. We don't have stamina in this game, so you don't have to be dwelling into stamina or stuff that much. You won't be leveling up your main scaling for your weapon, your main stat scaling. In this case, the weapon that I have right now has a preferred scaling on fire. As you can see right here, when I go down on fire, I'm going to get diminishing returns into damage, because this is my main stat where that I use to deal damage. Once I got here, I decided that I wanted to branch a little bit into something else. Now that is because when you use the spells, which is something very important, is part of your damage, it's a damage source. Your spells are going to bounce on one single specific enemy, just one. The enemy that belongs to your main affinity. So for example, I am not going to deal fire damage to fire enemies. Whereas there is a kind of a weird triangle. There is going to be one enemy that is going to be very susceptible to you, and the rest of the enemies are just going to be there. They are going to receive damage, but it is not going to be as efficient. And one of them is going to be more resistant, but the enemy of your base stat affinity is just going to be very much immune to your very own same damage. Now that said, what you want to do if you do not want to be doing that much of more of elemental damage, and I would even argue that this is the very same thing regardless of your damage, and this is what I am going to be doing with my character, this is what I am doing with my character, is that I'm just going to keep popping up all of my points into Fire Virtue. Because as you can see right here, even when I split right here, my second weapon, which you can see right here, does get diminishing returns, because my second weapon doesn't scale with fire, but that is just something second that I normally do not use. I usually use my main weapon, and as you were able to see in here, by placing points into my Fire Virtue, even though that I did split the damage a little bit, I still get more damage for my main weapon. I did lose a little bit of HP because of the diminishing returns on the main thing, but ideally what I want to do is, if I want to be a fire mage, a fire warrior, a warrior that focuses on the spirit gain rate and the spirit consumption rate for martial arts, which is what this build is, you want to max out this thing as fast as possible. It is just going to be the very same thing that it used to be on the base game, on the vanilla version of the game, where you would max out your main stat, and after you max out your main stat, you can start deciding into branching into something else. Now, ideally, I would say that hybrid builds are very powerful as well, but only when you use those builds for melee damage, because when you use those builds for melee damage, you are not going to suffer the diminishing returns into the elements of the damage output that you are going to have. Like for example, if I wanted to make a Wood Virtue and Fire Virtue, which would be kind of a monk kind of character right here, what would happen in here is that I would have to get points away from here, and I would have to even the odds right here. But as you can see right there, I lose too much damage into my Fire Virtue elements, and I am not going to get enough on my Wood Virtue, so I am basically splitting my damage just to be able to use the Wood Virtue against the enemies that are resistant to fire, and that's the element that I would be using. But all things considered, if you have everything considering everything. As you can see right here, I have 300 fire damage when it comes to the affinity of the elements. If I tone this down all the way down and then I take all my points off there, I have 450 damage, which is going to be huge. But do have in mind as well that each element, it's going to alter your playstyle. It's going to be one kind of a warrior. So for example, fire element, it's going to allow you to spam martial arts, so it is an element that favors the spam of martial arts, whereas the wood virtue is going to allow you to sustain buffs more often and it's going to give you more defense while you are blocking. On the other hand, metal element, it's going to allow you to spam more spells, and water virtue and earth virtue, they are somewhat similar to one to another. They focus on deflecting, but they are different on one specific scenario, where water virtue is going to allow you to spam deflects without losing that much spirit bar, whereas with earth virtue you are going to have to time them a little bit more, but you are going to get more reward when you properly deflect an attack. So the element is going to define your playstyle. The very first thing that you want to do for the DLC, for your new character, for your new build, is just going to be the very same thing. Max out that one stat that you use for your main character. Once you manage to max out this thing, you can start investing the rest of your points into something different. If you like the content, a like on the video is very appreciated. And also you today, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day, and goodbye.